Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome to Coffee, Cocktails, and Combos with Kelly D and Dr. B, and that is us. And we are here today to, oh my gosh, talk all things perimenopause, menopause. We're just gonna like stir it up and give you guys all the dish because guess what? Kelly D has been through it and is on the other side and going through that menopausal component. And I am in the perimenopausal phase and having to really dive in to figure out my body and my hormones and how to support myself. And so, you guys, like, we literally have two amazing pieces of the story here that hopefully we can just bring you some little tips, tricks, things to shift, things to be curious about, and most importantly, to just know that you don't have to live in all the distress and despair and turmoil of these seasons of life, but that there are, again, little tips and tricks and things that you can be empowered with to really take control and feel like your younger self again. So, welcome. And I just want to like dive straight in because I'm not menopausal yet, working on it, getting there, but Kelly D is. So she's had 12 full months without bleeding, without a period. And so that
Yep.
day after that 12th month is you're technically menopause. Okay.
Yep.
So everything before that's peri, and then now she's menopausal. So I just
Yep.
want to like dive right in and just be
Okay.
like, okay, give us all the dish, girl, because you've been there, you're doing it, you've done it. So like what would you even say to myself who's like looking at that, in hopefully on the horizon, but also our audience that's really curious about what your experience was and is.
Yeah. So first off, there is help out there. So don't be shy. Quite
Mm-hmm.
often there is a stigma attached to, being a crone, being an old lady in this case, all that kind of stuff, right? But it's
Chalk
not.
it
It's
up
just
to old
another,
age.
yeah, it's just another phase in our beautiful and amazing life that we
Yes.
choose,
Oh,
that we
yeah.
chose to live in. So,
Mm-hmm.
so for me, and hopefully I'm not going to be too graphic, but I will share a few things that happened to me, just
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
if this does happen, like don't be afraid, don't think you have ovarian cancer or anything of that kind of nature. I mean, of course, you're going to get checked if you've got other symptoms, but
Sure.
it's quite often to have like clumps of blood that do come out during your period before you,
Mm.
which Brianne's going to get into more probably, but I'm just going to explain my story. What had
Yeah.
happened to me that I would like bleed through my pants. I'd be in the garden. I would stand up and I would just gush, and there would be
Yes.
clumps and everything, right? And you're not expecting it. And quite frankly, I didn't really know. And I'm in healthcare. I was not
Mm-hmm.
expecting the extent of what had happened to me, of
Yeah.
course, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
being moody, my breasts were tender. I had headaches, which I never get. I had insomnia like crazy, but I also have hypothyroidism. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the symptoms that I was experiencing were also akin to having hypothyroidism. So I really kind of like poo-pooed them in a way because
Mm-hmm.
I had already had to live with this. And of course, as we all know, if you suffer from any kind of hormone imbalance at all, the doctors, unfortunately, do not really offer a whole lot of help except for
Yeah.
here, take this medication. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
there's so many other avenues you can look at, seeing a naturopath and all that kind of thing, of course, right? So
Yeah.
we will get into the endocrine system maybe at a later podcast. But after I had finally gone through and I had my 12 months with no period at all, I started to investigate, and I figured out that we need like magnesium in our body, which I also need with hypothyroidism. So it's very funny how there is a link with natural care and self care
Yeah.
when you're in the menopause. But again, we're going to get into that a little bit later because we found out some great tools that we can share with you. So I actually had an IUD put in during that time. And for me, I found it really, really helpful.
Mm.
The bleeding had stopped, the clumping had stopped. I still had a lot of the symptoms and everything, but again, they were like likable to hypothyroidism. Okay, so with the IUD, I didn't suffer. I didn't have any pain. My mood swings had decreased for sure. My hair didn't fall out. Like my nails didn't get, clumpy and like soft, anything of that. But I did really start to get into yoga. That's really what saved
Mm.
me was I
Mm.
started to meditate, got into
Yeah.
yoga, became a yoga practitioner. So I was like full on because
You're like,
Dr.
well,
B
that's
and
what
I
they
are like,
say, right? Like we always get into something because we're like trying to figure it out, and then we realize the need for it, and we're like,
yeah,
oh, this is the part of my journey. And like I had
exactly.
to go through it myself, and now I'm gonna help
Yeah.
others through it too. I love that. Yeah,
And
for sure.
Dr. B and I are like extremists. So we do it all the work first, which is fine, right? So we know the
Yeah,
turns and
yeah.
trials and tribulations, of course, right? Yeah, so
Hmm.
that's what I started to do for myself. And so now I'm 54 and I don't have the IUD in anymore. Obviously, I haven't had it in for almost 3 years now. And I still do get some night sweats, maybe once a month for a couple nights, but that's really it. Um, but in terms of changes, I definitely noticed like the estrogen and the collagen in my skin. Like
Hmm.
I'm like wrinkly, I'm a little bit more flabbier than I like to be, even though I exercise and everything else. It's definitely a component. I
Hmm.
do find that I get leg cramps quite a bit, that sort of thing, but it's all has to do with could be part of my lifestyle. But these are
Yeah,
some of the
yeah.
symptoms, like after peri, when you're getting into menopause, definitely more moodier for sure.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. And it's
and
just like
not even,
spontaneous, right? Like you like
yeah,
respond to somebody and you're kind of like, "Meh," and then you're like, whoa, I literally have no idea why I just responded that way or why I
yeah,
feel like I'm like boiling inside.
right,
And I literally have
like,
had a wonderful day, and yet
yeah,
I'm being like a snooty bee right now. And that
yeah.
doesn't make sense. So let me tune in. Yeah.
I honestly have not been so like annoyed with things
Yes.
other than like this past year. Like I've really been angry about things. It's not my
Mm-hmm.
personality
Yeah.
at all. So I've really had to like be aware of that kind of mood switch for sure, and
Hmm.
just take into account, like what's kind of happening and kind of
Yeah.
settle my own self
So just
down,
being
right?
aware, centering,
Yep,
grounding, the yoga practice and imagining helps tremendously with
yep,
that. And so
totally.
then when you do have a swing, you're like, oh, and then you have the tools through those practices to kind of regulate yourself. Obviously, like free brain tapping,
Yeah,
which we've talked about in other podcasts, things like that,
yep.
that you're like, oh, shoot, that's not what I wanted to sound like or how I wanted to
Hmm.
react. Let me come back into myself and ground and just make sure that I'm taking a
Yep.
deep breath and I'm centering and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
so that you
And
can
then
control it as much
also,
as possible, right?
yep, of course, because it all comes about us, right? So
Yeah,
being
always.
self-empowered within ourselves, of course. So sexual relations have diminished quite a bit. I was on
Mm.
an all-time high when I had my IUD in. I'm not gonna lie, I had the best sex of my whole entire life. That was ultimate. But after that, like, bad, like the dryness occurred.
Hmm.
Um, Again, like my breasts were very, very tender, all that kind of
Hmm.
thing. I
Hmm.
didn't have the libido that I
Yeah,
had
yeah,
a few years
yeah, because
ago.
its
So that
hormones are like,
changes. Yeah,
you
that
know.
changes quite a bit.
Hmm.
Energy levels, I've definitely noticed the last year
Mm.
have changed for me. Like I'm still very active and everything, but internally I noticed there's quite a bit of a shift that I have to like push myself to do what I was doing
Mm.
a
Hmm.
couple years ago, which is not, to me, it's very upsetting because because I don't
Well,
like
that
to
like
be.
motivation too, but then the
Yeah.
like the actionable like
Mhm.
mojo, right, to go
Yeah.
forward.
That's right.
And that starts in perimenopause, because I've definitely
Mhm.
noticed that. But it's not to say that it ends just because your period is done for 12 months. Obviously, Kelly's sharing with us that, like, hey, this is something that we still have
Yep.
to combat or work with or figure out how to support our
Hmm.
bodies best. And one thing I know from Dr. Mindy Pelz's research is that if you're not actually having a cycle in a sense of bleeding, so let's say you're truly in that menopausal phase, or you're on something like the IUD where you're not actually bleeding, so you're not totally certain of where you're at in your 28-day cycle, is
Yep.
that you would do things in accordance to the moon cycle. Because
Yep.
coincidentally, but not ironically, the moon cycle is also at 28 days. So being able to
Exactly.
know when to wax and wane and when to stress your
Yep.
body and when not. Because
Exactly.
typically when we are menstruating in that first, so day one that you start bleeding up to day 14, when you're technically in ovulation somewhere between 12 and 15. So day one to day 14 is when everything is high. So you feel good, you have the energy, you should be stressing your body. So if you want to do that extra workout, do the extra workout. If you want to
Hmm.
try something new like intermittent fasting, or you're going to be doing a speaking engagement and you need to be at the height of your performance and you can schedule it accordingly, you're going to want to schedule it in that first 14 days. That's where your body is more tolerant of stress. And it's like, that's like your power phase. That's where you're like,
That's
go,
right.
go, go, do. Your libido is going to be up naturally. But then in that second phase, so the luteal phase, everything starts to drop, preparing for shedding of the uterus, shedding of the lining. And so, really, though, day 21 to day 28, so whether you're following the moon cycle or your actual menstrual cycle, that's where stress is not good. Like our body is, we need to rest. We need to really stay like below the radar and not have those extra stresses on our body in order to really support where we're at in that phase.
Hmm.
So,
And that lends itself to the adrenal fatigue, which
mhm.
which we hear about all the
Because
time,
we're just burning,
right?
burning, 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 burning,
That's right.
right? Yeah,
Exactly.
instead of honoring those cycles.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So being aware of all of that, and for all
Mhm.
our witchy poo friends out there, you can adapt your moon cycle, which
Yeah.
is awesome, right? Because we are
Yep.
moving into that crone stage, right?
Mhm.
That this is when we come into our own self-empowerment and our
Mhm.
wisdom, which is awesome. So menopause does not all have to be a negative thing. It's just learning the trials and tribulations of how to navigate it.
Yeah, I love how you said that too. Because it's like a maturity, right? But our body, like one thing I've noticed is like my body does not feel like mine until I started doing the research and made just these like tiniest little shifts. I mean, tiny. It's like the radio stations at like 99.7 and you need it to be at 99.9 for clarity of that
Yeah,
radio station. And it's like if you just do do, oh now, oh gosh, that feels so much better. And all I had to do was tweak this or tweak that versus like this complete 180 and I got to live it completely. And there might be some of you where it really is living a different lifestyle. For me, it just was these small, small tweaks
hmm
to really tune in and say, I'm going to support my body and my needs in that cycle to the best of my
that's
knowledge.
right.
And that's the thing is, you could talk to a handful of medical doctors and they haven't even learned this information. Some of
Nope.
them are the ones that are paving the way because they've become very
Hmm.
interested in it. And so they've started really diving into the research. And that's who I'm like
That's right.
totally nerding out on right now.
Yeah.
But it's not taught across the board. So you might go to your
No.
gynecologist and like Kelly was saying earlier, there's, oh, here's some hormones or here's some medications to try and help with, your anxiety is another big one. I don't know if you experience that, but anxiety in
Hmm.
perimenopause and
It's
menopause.
huge. It's
So,
huge.
they want to give medication because medication in their eyes is what they know and what's going to help, but it's not always what you need, right? And so
Hmm.
going into this research and getting some of the more natural things that you have, they're
That's
free and
right.
you have control over. Like that
That's right.
sounds amazing, right?
And just for the record, I'm not trying to promote getting an IUD by any way, shape, or form. That just worked for
Sure.
me. So
Yeah, yeah,
make
yeah.
sure to do your own
Yeah,
research and see what actually
yeah,
blends in with who you are and what works
yeah.
with your body. But also, there's a great book out there as well and again, I'm not promoting it, I'm just mentioning it, is the Vagina Bible. That's a really good, it's a great information tool, actually.
Hmm.
It just
Hmm.
gives such a vast awareness, which we as women, unfortunately, collectively, don't have a lot of
Hmm.
that information that is easy
Yeah.
for us to get at. We've got to research it. We have to learn what's best for us. So definitely do some
Hmm.
research, find out what's going on, like read your body, write things down, like
Yeah.
be
I
aware,
started
be
keeping a
aware.
journal and it's been great.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's super important, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
just go for a walk and just be within yourself. Learn your body, see what feels good,
Hmm.
and then see if you do need to maybe take some vitamins or minerals, change your
Hmm.
diet up a bit,
Hmm.
maybe take a yoga class or go swimming or whatever it is that you
Yeah.
need to stay away from the adrenal fatigue for sure.
Hmm.
That's one thing I can definitely offer up, is that for sure within the menopause stage, right? Because then next we're going
Yeah.
to go with Leanne and talk about
Yeah.
perimenopause.
Yeah, two things I want to bring up that you spoke on. So the IUD, I just want to give a slight little plug as a pelvic floor practitioner. One thing I've seen is in a high amount of patients who have had some form of sexual trauma in their history, an IUD being inserted is at some level a trauma to the body, and then there's this foreign object that resides in your body for an extended period of time, sometimes 3 years, sometimes 5 years. And so, with that being a foreign object and your body being in more of a reflexogenic response where it's like, oh, I don't like this in here, this, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
idea because of the trauma,
Yep.
there are quite a few patients that come in with an IUD in that are having significant significant amounts of pelvic pain and issues in the pelvic region. And so typically what I educate on is let's try some conservative methods here, but just know that it may be a conversation you want to have with your doctor to see if it is right for you now that you've tried it. Because
Yep.
what I have seen is that those patients specifically, they get it removed and their pain and dysfunctions almost resolve immediately because the
Mm-hmm.
body's like, oh. So just a side note, and that's not for everybody. IUD is
Mm-hmm.
great in its own way for the right person, but there's also a population that I see that it doesn't serve very well. So just know
Yes.
that.
And
um
for my witchy poo friends,
yeah.
there is a way to imprint it as well. So
Yes.
it does work within your system. Both Dr. B and I are able to do that. So that's,
Mhm.
we have that extra bit of knowledge in
Yeah.
regards to that.
Yeah.
But from
Yeah.
a medical point of view, absolutely,
Correct.
if you're experiencing all of that, you want to get it removed for sure.
Yeah, talk to your doctor because this is
Yep.
not, we are not your doctors. So talk to your
Nope.
doctor. We're just giving you some, we just love you and we're
Two
friends and we're giving you
chicks. We're
some
just two
information. Yeah.
chicks shooting the shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about that Kelly brought up was the walking piece. And that has been an incredible little dial shift for me as well. We look at it as NEAT activity. So NEAT is non exercise activity thermogenesis. And so that's actually if you're feeling like you're getting that abdominal kind of flat tire belly weight, going and like having these intense workouts isn't necessarily you're not, that's the stressors. That's a stress that depending on where you're at in that phase, your body's not going to love. But doing more
Right.
neat exercise, so your yoga, your walking, things like that, is really going to be beneficial because of what it does for your system. And it's not that stressor like going and doing a hardcore workout, which is wonderful in that follicular phase. So anyway, I just wanted to put those side notes in there since you brought it up, and I was like, oh, I have information on that. So there we have it. Is
Of
there
course
anything
you
else?
would.
Oh, sorry. In closing, is there anything else, Kelly D, that you just want our menopausal women to just like know and feel and have and love?
Yeah, just be patient and
Mm.
really like tune into your own body awareness for sure, for sure, for sure, because that's where your self-empowerment is. If you don't get information from your doctor, go to a nurse practitioner, seek out some professional help if you're suffering like from mood springs, if you're slipping down that slippery slope of
Mm-hmm.
depression, that kind of thing, there
Yeah.
is help out there. Please go and get it. Step
Yeah.
away from the
Mm.
stigma that's attached to becoming older. Oh, you'll get over it and this, that.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
No.
You have
No.
to really grow into what's happening in your body
Mhm.
and your mind, because it affects every facet of our lives. It really,
Yeah.
really does,
Yeah.
right? So please, please, please take care of
Yeah.
you first. It's all
Yeah.
about self-care, right?
Yeah, be your own advocate. I love that because it
Mhm.
really is, sadly, not everybody is informed with this information about this season of
No.
life. So make sure you're speaking with a practitioner who really has delved into the work and understands what's going on. So,
Yeah.
okay, thank you, Kelly D. One, for being vulnerable and sharing your story with us, and two, for just loving us and empowering us to advocate for ourselves and step into this season feeling like we're in control. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We love you
That's
and
right.
appreciate you. And we love you guys and appreciate you guys. So we'll see you on the next episode.
See you soon.
Bye.